All right, I'm rushing these a little bit, try to get them out. One, while the synth is still hot, kind of to grow my channel, but also just giving you sort of like a daily entry on my thoughts with the device. So this is day one with the Tonverk. Um, I don't know how much of it is me not being that well versed in elektron workflow and how much of it is, me just trying to figure things out, or maybe it's just not well laid out, but these are what my thoughts are for the first day. Off the rip, you open the box and you're greeted by this pink card that's basically instructing you to look out for updates. Kind of, in my opinion, they're telling you they know that this product is not done and that there's more coming. I think time will tell, but honestly, I think that that's exactly what the problem is here. This is a very unfinished product. And I don't know that for sure, but there's a lot of empty slots in all the different menus and screens when you page through, which I assume are things that are to come later. But as far as I know, I haven't seen a roadmap of all the features they're going to add. I think everyone else is in the dark. So you definitely, you can only speculate. You have zero evidence that a feature that you might want or need is going to be added. So that might work against this thing. In a year from now, this could be an incredible device, but right now it might get returned. It's surprisingly heavy when I took it out of the box. It's relatively a compact size, but the weight is heavier than you'd expect, which I guess is a good thing. It doesn't feel like picking up an empty box like some gear does. But that was the first thing that I noticed. I think it's a pleasant size. It's not too small, it's not too big. It's somewhere right in the middle. I'd be curious to compare it to my favorite Electribe 2 and see, obviously the Electribe 2 is thinner, or not as deep dimension-wise, but I'd be curious to see if they're roughly the same size. I think the Tonverk is a little bigger. It's definitely heavy. I wouldn't want to hold it in my lap and use it. Not that sort of gear. So as this is, my little synth, this, not so much a little synth, but that's okay. The idea, it's still smaller than a lot of big synths. So the idea is to sample a lot of big synths and use them in this thing. As I stated in my last video, this is not, obviously there's not a lot of people out there that are having gas for this thing. This wasn't just a, impulse buy or anything like that. This was, obviously it just came out when I bought it, so that's a little impulsive, but it's to consolidate existing gear and simplify my studio setup and layout. So this has got specific goals that I'm testing it for to see if it will be the replacement for my old Pro rack mount samplers. So I'm going to kind of as I explore it, I'm trying not to get sidetracked and stay focused on the things that I need in order to replace that gear. If no matter how fun or good this thing sounds, if it doesn't replace those, the gear and simplify my studio, then I probably will sell it just because that's not my intention in buying it. When I get done exploring it, I will put together a final review video and just kind of compile all my thoughts, because I could have an opinion on day one, and by day 4 I could figure out what I was doing wrong and it may no longer be an issue. So as I said again in my first video, or my last video, I'm not an Elektron fanboy. So I'm not like, oh, Elektron's the best company, everything they do is incredible. So my expectations aren't as high as maybe some other people are. I think the majority of people who are disappointed with this release or not hyped about it are the people who wanted, an Octrack 3. They wanted something different from Elektron. They're used to being amazed by Elektron's incredible gear, and this is falling short for them. But I'm not an Elektron fanboy, so I had no expectations. I wasn't really looking for this to be incredible. I was looking more for a workhorse. I don't really want a gimmicky thing that can do something really cool, but doesn't replace the gear that I already have. I have a relatively functional studio, so I don't need to add a bunch of gear. Um, I don't need to add sounds. I want to make things smoother, condense it down, streamline things. Even having no expectations for Electron gear, $1,600 is a lot of money for any piece of gear. So I expect a lot. Um, I wasn't sure where this thing would fall against its competitors. I don't really know what it'd even compete against. Some people would compare it to like the MPC or compare it to the 1010 bento box, the more sub $1,000 groove box sampler combinations. You could also go upscale and you could say, oh, it's quite affordable compared to something like an Iridium. There's also some synths that I have my eyes on, like the Prophet X. It's an incredible machine, which is essentially like a sampler with a analog synth and analog filters for each voice. So this falls somewhere in the middle. I was intrigued by the Tori's Pioneer collaboration that was the SP16 sampler. That had a lot of things I liked, but ultimately, from my understanding, the one analog filter was more like a master effects and not like a part of a synth engine on each track. So I never got in, I never got a chance to use one, and I just haven't been interested enough to purchase it. But that combination of multi samples and analog filters, I think, is a glorious combination. So this falls somewhere in the middle. $1,600 is probably on the high end. Like I said, cheaper than an Iridium, but much more expensive than, an MPC one or what is the other one? Not the Ableton one, but the Native Instruments push. No, not push. Machine, the new machine that's independent. It's more expensive than that gear, but cheaper than some of the more high end stuff. So I do have expectations for the price point. And with that said, initial reaction is not good. Um, just getting into the box, it feels a lot like the Roland MC707. There is somehow like a awkwardness to it, as if it can do a lot, but it's hard to harness it. And actually, I'm not really sure it even can do a lot. Um, the multi-sample engines or multiplayer, whatever they call it, seemed relatively shallow. I didn't really find much in there that blew my mind. I haven't dived into the effects. Those look to be pretty complex, but my goal is really to focus on the bread and butter things that I'm looking to replace in my setup. So I'm trying to not be distracted by drums and effects and sequencer tricks. I want to really focus in on the basic multi-sample synthesis engine. Number one on my bucket list was if the auto sample would automatically put loop points. So if it auto samples to a one shot, or if it auto samples to true like multi sample where you can hold it down. So here we go. Here's the test. It's not looping. Looks like there's an option for a loop mode, but it's not enabled on the multiplayer. Not enabled in the multiplayer. So I think like a lot of people who might be interested or even hyped about this machine, or anytime you buy new gear, you would try to consume a lot of YouTube media on it. Obviously, this thing being brand new, there wasn't a lot out there. We probably, if you're watching my video, you probably watched all the other Tonverk videos that are out there. EasyBot did a live stream on it, and in that live stream, he sampled, I think, a Eurorack or analog synth, and then he played it back and he switched between the two back and forth, and it was like not even close, the sampled version versus the original analog version. And he kind of glazed over that. He was like, I think his exact words was like, oh, it sounds just like this, I guess, or close enough, or something like that. And there's a lot involved there. There's the YouTube algorithm and who knows what, but like it didn't sound close at all. So I kind of caught that and I was like, uh-oh, let me make sure this thing sounds, that replicates just a basic record and playback very well. So one of my first things I wanted to do was just to test that part out. Another thing is I watch all these videos and they show the multi-samples and they say how easy it is to do it, but I don't see anything about setting up the loop point in the multi-sample. So I kind of assumed that with this algorithm where it's doing that little test hit to get the latency and all that, I kind of assumed that it was going to sort of automatically put 0-point crossings to make a loop in the center of the sample. Just like it seems like it kind of looked like from the demos it was doing on the single player, where it would have that smoothing effect. I think they referred to it as smooth as butter in the press release, but it would allow you to crossfade the endpoints and make the loop more seamless. So I assumed it must have been doing that automatically somehow through the multi-sample recorder. So these were two things I really wanted to check out. Well, day one, I did not hook up any analog gear. I ran VSTs into it through USB, which at first I thought like, okay, I'll just see if it sounds like the VST. Well, the VST, when you hook it up through USB, it's sending a digital signal, so the audio converters are the exact same. So it should sound exactly the same, the sampled version and the VST version. So it pretty much did, with the exception of I noticed that some of the VSTs I was using had built-in modulation. So if I tapped the note a few times, the VST version would change, where the sampled one would not. It was static, which is a common issue. So a lot of times to deal with that, you've got what they call the round robin, and I saw in advertising that this machine is going to have a round robin feature. So I was looking for it, did not find it in the sampling menu. I looked through the menu a little bit, I looked through the manual a little bit, still didn't find it. I'm not saying it's not there, but I can't find it. So my initial multi-samples of some VSTs are pretty close to useless. I mean, they sound okay, but they're nothing incredible, nothing to write home about. So there's that. The second thing I was trying to test is whether these things looped, and they do not. When you sample something with its multi-sample recorder, the way it imports them all, they're one-shots, which is almost an instant deal breaker for me, and it makes me think like, okay, this is going back, like this is kind of useless if I can't multi-sample an instrument and then hold down a key and drone it out or sustain a note, change the length of the notes. That's just not. I mean, I've dealt with that in other samplers, but this is not in 2025. Not for $1,600. This should hold the note. Well, I looked at it more. If it's in there, I can't find it. It doesn't seem to be. From what I've been reading online, it almost looks like the only way to set up those loop points is to use a computer, which obviously, then it makes it like, okay, well, now we're going to just go toe to toe with the MC707, because the reason why I'd want to go with this machine over a 707 is because I don't need to use a computer to create my multi-sample files. Thing that I found frustrating, and it's a very minor thing. When I was trying to do the A/B between the sampled version and the VST version, I was trying to swap between a multi-sample track and a MIDI track. And for the longest, I could not get the MIDI to work. From the auto sample page, it worked. It sent MIDI out and it did the whole auto sample thing. But from the MIDI track, I couldn't get anything. And I was getting so frustrated with this, and I wasted a lot of time trying to figure this out. I'm like, well, why is this so challenging? Well, it was like somewhere in the pages further down, there was a spot that was like turn MIDI port on, and it was defaulted to off. And this just like, I know it's like a small thing, but like, this isn't my first go around with groove boxes or samplers. And the fact that it took me, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to sort that out, like that's ridiculous. I mean, the only thing I could think of is if you're using a MIDI track to control something internally. Like if I make a MIDI track on track number 4 and route that to MIDI channel 1, and it's automatically controlling itself, which could be interesting and could be cool, but there's no way that's the primary use for a MIDI track. So you should always have that MIDI track be defaulted to on state. I mean, maybe it's a slip up, maybe it's something I did, but that was wild, and I had a really hard time figuring that out. At the very least, put that MIDI port on off selector on the first page, but there's really no excuse for that thing not to be on by default. Part of the reason why I purchased this is because I thought a modern piece of equipment would work how I'd want it to work. And, I don't think what I'm asking for is crazy. I'm asking for a modern interpretation of a pro-level sampler. I don't think anything I'm asking for is out of the ordinary. Would I like to have live looping? Yes. Do I need that? Am I asking for that? No. The things I'm asking for are simple things, and when they're not here, it's really bizarre. So I've worked around with things, so far. I mean, there's the saying that there's no perfect gear, right? Everything's got shortfalls, everything's got pros and cons. I've worked with a lot of gear that didn't do exactly what it's supposed to do, and I found a lot of workarounds. But this is frustrating. So it says in the manual 2 interesting things. It says that when you save a multi-sample, it saves a text or a data file, and it saves a single wave file, which has every single sample end to end stacked together, which tells me that what's going on is that data file is giving addresses for each note, and as you play the keyboard, it's calling up each note. So I've had units before which didn't have a proper multi-sampling system, and what you can do is you could have the same sample loaded to, let's just say, 80 keys, and you can map a different start point to each one of those 80 keys. So then when you play the sample, you're just playing the different start points. And then all you have to do is, using a computer or whatever, or even you could do it with hardware, but it's more challenging. You'd sample other sounds with the exact same spacing between the notes so they all line up. So picture in your head like a grid, and you're swapping out the samples in each spot. And then as you play it chromatically, you're accessing each one. That's been done before. I've done it, but in a modern piece of gear for this cost, I shouldn't have to do that. So this is going to bring me to my wrap up. Day 1, there's some aspects that feel pretty nice. Navigating the menus, I think, in rolling gear is not my favorite, but this feels so far a lot like the MC707. On the 707, you have your drum tracks, you have your tone tracks, and your looper tracks. And this feels very much the same way. You've got your sub tracks, which are similar to a drum track. You've got your single player, which I guess could be your looper track. And then you've got your multi-sample, which is like your tone track. Here's the problem. Just with what's there, it's relatively simple. I, kind of found my way through each machine and could see what each one did relatively quick. So where's the selling point of this machine? Is it the combination with the effects, which look crazy powerful? Because I'm trying to stay away from that. I've got effects units. I'm not buying a $1,600 effect unit. It better be able to sample well pro level, and now we're talking. If you tell me, yeah, it's just a good bread and butter pro level sampler, and then you add in the crazy sequencer and you add in the crazy effects routings and all that, hey, I'm sold. I'm sold. I'll keep this thing. I'm selling off my studio. This is great. But it's not there on the sampling end. Am I going to wait it out? Probably not. Unless I'm missing something, unless I discover something, my day one verdict is this thing is probably going to be returned. Um, the part that really gets me and it's like feels like a rolling move is that they're showing me that they can do everything I want to do, but they're not letting me do it. And here's my explanation. In the subtracks, there is the round robin feature. You can change the sample per step, and you can even make it random. That's there. So it can do the round robin. In the single player, there's the looping, the loop points. So it can play a sample, and in the sustain stage, it can loop a section, and you can let go, and it'll play the rest. So it can do that. And guess what? The single player is polyphonic. You can go up and down. But like sort of more limited samplers, it's as it pitches it up and down, the sample is becoming shorter or longer, and it's degrading the quality. The multi-sample, which is the solution to that issue, does multi-sampling, but you can't put in the loop points, and you can't round robin it. So it's like you got everything I want there, but you got it spread out across these three modes, which makes it useless to me. And that is very frustrating. And maybe I should be like, hey, look, proof of concept, proof that they can do all the things you want them to do. It's not there yet, but I'm sure it's going to come, right? It's got to be, right? But am I willing to gamble on that? I don't know. Anyways, stay tuned for day 2. Also, like I said, I'm really gunning this thing against some of my pro level synths. I'm looking to condense my studio, so I'm doing direct comparisons for the features I need. This might not be what you're interested in, and you know what? While I got the device, if you got some questions, I don't mind looking into it. I'm not claiming to have the answers, but I have got the device, so I can look into it. If you got something you're interested in, let me know. Once again, I'm really focusing on the sampling because the drum aspects and the effects aspects are good, but unless the sampling is solid, I'm not buying. Basically, the sequencer, there's a lot of things that are really good about the machine, but if it doesn't do the bread and butter things, it's too much of a toy or a gimmick for me. It's not what I need in my studio, and it's just one more thing in the studio, and that's what I want to get away from. So I'm staying focused. So I got a list of things I want to look at, and I'm going to stick to that each day and make my decision probably at the end of a week. If you got any questions, hit me up. Thing that I just noticed, you can't seemingly load the multi-samples, but you can go to the individual samples, it looks like, and then you can play them. So that's playing. That's playing the individual samples. But there's no way to go in there and edit it. Not sure what's going on there. I will dig deep. Could be user error. I'll see what's next, but without looping a multi-sample, that's a bit of a... that almost kills it for me. So it doesn't loop on the multi-samples, at least not the ones that it makes on its own. That's frustrating. Let's try one of the built-in presets. So either I'm missing a setting or it's just not set up where you get the loop on a multi-sample when you make it within the machine. yet the presets can do it. That's frustrating. 'Cause it's getting late. I gotta get some sleep. I'll be back tomorrow with more stuff.